To the Mary Grace Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. I am here today with one of our favorite guests, hopefully to be a regular. We're working on that. And that is our friend Stacy Whited, the beautiful half of the Flyover Conservatives that she does with her husband, Dave.
I'm sure he would appreciate that. He'll probably thank you so much,
he
Mary Grace.
he knows that. He
Yep.
knows. Dave knows.
He's like, he's the handsome one.
The beauty, yeah. So, and that's it's the way it should be.
Yes.
We're not confused about what
No.
women are supposed to look like in this part of the movement. Speaking of which, isn't it crazy how, like, I don't know if you see the comments on Kristi Noem, how triggered people get by the fact that she's a woman
I know.
dressed like a woman, looking like a woman. I'm like, this is actually how women look.
Yeah.
And she's out in the field, she's wearing cargos and a t-shirt, and people are saying that she's cosplaying. And I'm going, no, no, no. Actually, when women dress like that, that's not cosplaying. When a man puts on falsies and a bra and
Exactly.
tries to wear women's clothes, that's cosplaying. And then when you call that thing a woman, that you're the problem. Like,
Mm,
why do you have problems with real women actually being women? That's like literally, she has long hair. Yeah, she does have long hair. Is it extensions? I don't know, but it looks good.
and who cares?
Like, nobody cares. Yeah. So it's just so funny though. Yeah, I mean, you can't see a post about her without somebody getting triggered by the fact that she like looks like a woman.
Yeah. People are so interesting. They're gonna look for something they can complain about,
Yeah.
and they really are a lot of times intimidated by women,
Yeah.
and
I think
especially
so.
in, powerful positions. They really struggle with that for sure.
I think so too, and the fact that a woman can be feminine,
Yes.
be ultra feminine, and also be in a position like that, I think that is very hard for them because they equate, I think, power with masculinity,
Mhm.
and so any women who get in positions of power, I'm having a revelation here, they actually cut off their femininity,
Oh,
you
that
know?
is really true.
Have you noticed
And they
that?
and they have a hard time, I think, thinking that somebody that's beautiful could actually be intelligent. It's like it's one way or the other,
And then you
Either
throw in
either she's beautiful, like God couldn't give you that much. You're
yeah,
either beautiful or you're
yeah.
smart, but you can't be both.
And then you throw in a Southern accent, and it just they like,
They don't
their
know what to do with it.
people are short-circuited. They're like, "Hi,
Exactly.
y'all, let me just tell you something." And I can go Southern when I want to, but it's yeah, absolutely, and they have no grid for it,
No.
none. Just, like, and it's funny because my dad, I mean, not a woman, but my father, my late father, he had a very genteel Virginia accent, and he sounded, very Southern, very,
Mhm.
and, he didn't dress he dressed in usually, like, he had on, like, a denim jacket and jeans, and so people would hear him and mistake him for somebody really ignorant, and he was one of the smartest people I knew,
Yep.
and so it was really funny, and he could converse with everybody from any class. Um, and it always threw people off because they looked at his appearance and automatically assumed, "Oh, this guy doesn't know anything."
Yes.
And then, he read he carried a pocket constitution, if
Oh,
that tells you anything.
wow.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah,
You
like
came from some really good, heritage, really good roots there.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, he always kept it in his car and he would pull it out if he ever got pulled over. He's like, "Well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Fourth Amendment."
Wow.
You know?
That is so cool.
Yeah, and so I guess it and, we thought he was kinda nuts at the
As a child,
time,
that was your dad? Yeah.
and now, I tell my niece and nephew, I'm like, "Listen, you get pulled over, here's what you do."
Pull out your constitution. Go
I'm
to
like,
Amendment 4.
"Listen, you need to understand your rights. Don't open your mouth. You understand that? You have the right to remain silent. That's what that means. Don't even answer the question. Just keep your mouth shut."
Yep.
The first time my niece was in a car accident, she called me. and she was in her friend's brother's car.
Okay.
And my first question to her was, "What's in the car? Do you know what's in the car? Do you know is if there's anything in the car that shouldn't
Mm.
be in the car? Whose car are you driving?"
Right.
And I said, "Before you call the police, you need to know what's in that car." And
Ugh,
she goes, "Oh, okay." And because when she told me it was the brother's car, I was like,
right.
"Hold the phone."
We've seen
Um,
too many movies.
yeah, the college age brother's car.
Yeah.
I'm like
Dangerous.
I'm like, "Girl, you tell me the truth right now." So it's like we've evolved, like, from my father being kinda nutty,
Yep.
and anybody who's listening, we're talking about my father, my late father, not my stepdad. So sometimes when I say that, people think, "Oh gosh, did something happen?" No, I call him my dad, but it's my stepdad that I live with now, and he's fine. He's sitting outside watching the birds, and he's got a
Aw,
little blanket on because it's kinda chilly, but he's just enjoying the fresh air. So, but
that's
let's
great.
let's get into the content. We got a little down a little rabbit trail, but we talked off air a little bit about what is going on. Just give us a brief introduction. You haven't been on the show in a while. Uh, what is it that you like to focus on, especially on your prophetic wrap up that you do every week, which you had some
Absolutely.
craziness with today?
Oh, man. Thank you again for having me on. I really do
Oh,
appreciate it.
it's great to have you here.
I love it. So Flyover Conservatives, we do run it together as a family. So my husband and I, we are the co-hosts of the Flyover Conservative Show, and now our son Colton, who's actually in his 30s, he now has moved over from the producer side over to our side when we do our live shows, and so it's the three of us, which is a really fun combination. You got a 30-year-old and these two 52-year-olds, talking about current events, and we always examine current events through the lens of conservative Christian values. So we're looking through
Mhm.
that lens of what's going on in the world through conservative Christian
Right.
values. And then every week, what Mary Grace was talking about is I do something called the prophetic report. And we go through, so we see what's going on in the natural because we're always covering the news, but what is God saying? What's actually going on from his perspective? And it's so much fun. And each week I go through, there's usually about 5 or 6 different prophets that I'll, talk about of what they've been saying through the week. And then I find different categories that kind of matched up. What were the kind of the hot things that each one of these prophets were talking about, and how did they cross over? And so the big one that I would say this week, because I just had it yesterday, yesterday at 11:11, was dismantling. That has been huge for the last 2 weeks, and I think it's because we're seeing all of this shaking that has happened in all 7 spheres of influence in our society. So you have the education. Well, look what's happening in the education now, Department of Education and the executive orders and everything that's happening with that. And then you've got media, big things in media. You've got government, you have family, you have religion, you have business. And so you start going down these spheres of,
Mhm.
of influence, and you even see what's happening in the church. The church is really shaking with leadership that's been exposed to, what's been happening sometimes 20, 30 years ago that never was brought out in the light and being exposed. And so right now, the big thing that they're talking about, the prophets are talking about prophetic voices that are speaking today, is this whole thing of dismantling. So there was actually in a 2-week period of time, 5 prophetic voices that all talked about dismantling. And a big one was Amanda Grace from the 23rd of March. She was talking about dismantling of the Department of Education between Purim and Passover. And what she said, which was really interesting, is she said because it happened, what President Trump did with executive order with the education system, because of that happening between Purim, these are both Hebrew on the Hebrew calendars and holidays that they celebrate, the Jewish celebrate those 2 holidays, that it actually is a prophetic sign that that prayer is going to come back into the schools, which was pretty exciting to hear that.
Mhm.
And then Hank Kuhneman, that was on the 23rd, the exact same day. Hank Kuhneman, out of Omaha, Nebraska, delivered a prophetic word that actually said, I'm going to get right to that because it was pretty big. I will judge the schools and I will recreate what was meant to be the Department of Education. I will remove it and replace it with something that brings the honor of Christ back into the textbooks. So both of them talking about God talking through them about the Department of Education, what's getting ready to happen in our school system. So because we took Christ out of schools, prayers out of schools, now God's saying, I'm putting it back in the school. I'm going to put it back in the textbooks as well as prayer back into the school system. So pretty exciting, to hear that. Same day even.
Yes, and, I've noticed that God he seems to use Hank Kunneman as a frequently to confirm and
Yes.
corroborate words that other people are getting. It's like he's using, you know I don't know, it's interesting because a lot of people aren't as familiar with Hank Kunneman. He has a big platform,
Yep.
but he's not as much of a household name, especially in the MAGA movement, as Amanda Grace, probably because she was on the Reawaken tour and it became a more familiar name with a lot of people, and she's got her big YouTube channel. So I just think it's interesting because we his name comes up a lot when it comes to words like this where, you hear a word that is delivered and then God goes, "Okay, I'm just gonna give you a backup to this,
Right.
to
And that's
to
how cool
confirm it."
he is. God is
Yeah,
so good that, like,
yeah.
let's say that I feel like, hey, I feel like God has said something to me or to do
Mhm,
something,
mhm,
and I'll be like, okay, God, is this me? Is this you? And so I'll just say to him, God, will you confirm it? Will
mhm.
you have somebody else say something to
Yeah,
me? Will you? And he is big enough to do that. I
mhm,
love that about God because
yeah,
it's not like he'd say, oh, don't you trust me? No, he's
yeah,
like, okay, you have a heart to want to hear me. I will confirm that. And that's what he's doing
mhm,
over and over and over again with
yeah.
these words. Big one being the education system. Another one is the banking system. So Julie Green out of Iowa, God was saying through her that he was going to dismantle. In fact, I can read you the exact thing. There's dismantling of all the big banks controlling the nation, which was really big. So,
Mhm.
God is going to be dismantling these big banks that are controlling our nation. And then another one, Veronica Westwood, she's actually out of
You mean maybe
Ireland.
like the Fed?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what right, which we've heard Bo Polney talk about several times, and now to kinda
Mhm.
see this come around. And then Veronica West, I don't know if you've ever heard of her,
I
but
have,
she's out
yeah.
of Ireland, and, she said on March 24th, "The very structures that once exploited the innocent and the ignorant would be completely dismantled and destroyed, and a new kingdom economy rooted in radical generosity, justice, and righteousness will emerge."
Wow.
So there are so
Yeah.
many words about what's getting ready to happen and this whole dismantling. Amanda Grace had another one
Mhm.
last week. Julie Green had another one. And then Robin Bullock, this is interesting, out of Warrior, Alabama. So Robin Bullock, I don't know if you guys ever saw it, but on July the 4th of 2021 or 2020, it was either I think it was 2021. Nope, it was 2020. I'm sorry. Arguing with myself because it was actually before the election.
So it was during the pandemic.
It was during the pandemic. They all got together in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was all of these different prophets. I think there were 9 prophets on stage,
Mhm.
and there was like this whole war that was going on. Is like the spiritual war that was happening, and we obviously saw it manifest with the election in November of 2020.
Mhm.
But he said that at that point, the enemy came in and he stole the direction that the country was supposed to go at that time. And so he said, Robin Bullock said, God told him to go back to Nashville, Tennessee on July the 3rd, 2025, and redo basically what happened in July of 2020. And they're calling it the dismantling tour. And
I
so you hear
remember that. I remember because I think Kent Christmas was there.
Yep,
Yeah.
he was, and he's
Uh,
gonna be at this one.
okay. That's where his church is.
It is.
Interesting, interesting. And, I wanted to say a couple of things about the dismantling, but when you were talking about how God corroborates the different words that
Yes.
and you were saying that you often ask for a sign. I wanted to tell a brief story about something that happened to a friend of mine because I think there's somebody listening today who needs to hear that God cares about you on an
Mm,
individual basis, that you were talking about national and geopolitical, and maybe you're going through something where you're thinking, "That's all great, but I got this thing, and I need to know if God is listening to me, and if
mm,
he cares about me and my family, and this thing that is heavy on my heart." And I have a friend who has been dealing with some pretty intense health issues, and this has gone on for a few years now, and she's believing for her healing, and it hasn't manifested yet, and she's been in different valleys and peaks and times of unbelief, and she said the other day, she sent me a text about something that happened where, she's really struggled with asking God for signs, right? For some reason, but she just decided the other day to get kinda really honest with God and say, "Look,
mhm.
I'm discouraged. I'm struggling. I want a sign. I want you to give me a sign that you've got this. And I want it to be something really weird that wouldn't be just, oh yeah, that's just something that happens all the time. And
Right.
you have confirmation bias. So of course you think it's a sign, right? She said, just do something out of the blue that I wouldn't expect. And so she was at Lowe's in the garden center, and something caught her eye out of the corner of her eye, and she looked over, and sitting in one of those barrels was a bird. Now, birds get in Lowe's. They do, if you're
Yep.
ever in Lowe's,
Sure.
but it was a hawk.
Oh, wow.
It was a young hawk sitting in a barrel looking like 2 feet away from her, just looking at her like, "Hey." And,
Wow.
and she said
She's like, "Okay, yeah, that's very
she
unusual."
got chills, right? And this bird, started flying, and then it flew up and it sat on a high place, inside the garden center. And she said it was so obviously God saying, "I got you. I got this. I hear you. I'm giving you a sign of something that you could never think to ask for." Like not just a bird,
Yeah.
not there's little sparrows that fly around, and you can, like, if you go to the bird seed section, you can see there's
Yep.
evidence of birds. But, but, uh but this was so different. It was so, I mean, I've never seen a hawk like that, and
No.
that close up,
Yes.
and it's just kinda hanging out in the garden center. So I whoever, and there's a lot of things you can unpack about why God chose a hawk, a young hawk, and why it sat there and looked at her and then it flew. There's so much to unpack there, but the main point is that God, in all of his infinite power and glory, took that time and listened to his daughter and said,
Yes.
It's this is hard, I know it is, but you have a voice, and I hear your voice, and I know what your heart's desire is, and I haven't forgotten you." And that's, yeah,
Wow.
somebody needs to hear that right now,
Yes.
today. And, if it speaks to you, let us know in the comments at some point if you can. Um, Send me an email, let me know if that was a word for you, and if it's private, that's okay too. But I thought it was so encouraging, right?
That is so encouraging.
Yeah. I mean,
I love that, and I think there is like a there's 2 sides to that whole thing too, like, if
mhm,
in asking for a confirmation, you have sometimes people can be a confirmation for you, like, they can, do some sort of act, say something, and they're just being obedient because they feel like God said to do that, and then you're the receiver to actually be the one that's hearing it, so, like what you were saying there,
mhm,
like, I heard a lady talking about she makes bracelets,
mhm.
and she was at a store and she felt like she was supposed to take off the bracelet that she had on her wrist and give it to the lady at the checkout stand
Yeah.
because she felt like God said to do it. And she was like, God, this is so weird. What am I supposed to say to this lady? Like, hey, I'm taking off my bracelet and I feel like God said to give this to you. She goes, I didn't know what to do. So she was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. She takes off her bracelet, hands it to the girl. And she goes, I feel like God said I was supposed to give this to you. And the bracelet had some pink charms on it. And the girl immediately started crying. And she said, just a few days ago, she had been diagnosed with cancer. And she said to God, do you even care about me? Do you even like know that I'm here? Like, are
Mhm.
you going to help me through this? And that pink bracelet was assigned to her because of the pink ribbon for cancer that, hey, I am here with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So she was the receiver receiving it, but the other lady, the one that had to give the bracelet, it was so uncomfortable thinking, what am I going to say to this lady? Just being obedient. They were
Mhm.
both blessed in that process. So God used
Yeah.
both people to help
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. It's so encouraging. We need to take a quick break, and when we do, I wanna come back and talk about, I wanna pick up this conversation about the dismantling, what God's
Yes.
doing. As we go into a break, I wanna remind everybody that if you didn't get the notice, if you didn't know on social media that we were live, there's a good chance that it's just the way social media is. So please get on my mailing list. Go to marygracemedia.com and get on the mailing list so that you will never miss a notice when we go live. And you can also contact me through my email, info@marygracemedia.com. If you have something you want to share, keep it brief, please. And but also when you go to the website, you can find all of our partners there. Anybody that we partner with that sponsors the show, you can go there. And speaking of, we have an amazing sponsor that we love, and that is our friends over at griddownshoutdown.com. And this company is amazing because what they do is they are working with local farmers and ranchers, and they have a wonderful freeze-dried beef product. It's just beef. It's American grass-fed, grass-finished, freeze-dried beef. Anything that you would make with ground beef, you're gonna make with this. And when you go to their website and use promo code Mary Grace, when you do the 24 serving subscription and you use my promo code Mary Grace, you're gonna get 4 free servings with that. And that's a great deal. And you can customize your subscription. You can do it every other month, whatever. But a lot of people are using this as their regular everyday cooking beef. A lot of people are stockpiling it, but if the grid goes down and you've got a freezer full of things without a generator, you're gonna find out very quickly that you probably should have to that. And the other thing I wanna make sure people know is that we are partnered with our friends over at Synapse, and we're gonna run their ad right now so that you know how to take the best care of your health and be proactive as we're in this place of saving the country. You gotta put your own oxygen mask on first, and that's what we're gonna hear about our friends at Synapse. We'll be right back. Americans spend more now than ever on healthcare, and we're sicker than almost anybody in the world. We've put our trust in a system that's completely let us down. Dr. Troy Sproul and the team at Synapse Center for Health and Healing have changed all that. They are a functional medicine clinic, and they get to the root cause of what's made you sick in the first place. Once they do that, they give you solutions to help you get out of that. This is the way that medicine was meant to be practiced, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the entire system from the inside out, one person at a time, and you could be one of those people. And so when you're working with the team at Synapse, they're giving you solutions and not just prescriptions. That's a game changer for me. When you set up a free discovery call with Synapse, you're starting on a journey of healing. You're starting on a journey of getting answers. And that's why I've partnered with them, because I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want you to have all of the resources that you need to steward the body and the health that God's given you. Go to officialsynapse.com and tell them Mary Grace sent you. That's Official Synapse, SYNAPSE. Okay, we're back. And before we go into the content, I have a quick testimonial about Synapse, about Dr. Troy Sproul. And if you don't know who he is, if you have never heard him, we had him on the show last week. We do a live Q&A with him about one at least once a month. But many of you know that I have been kind of uh, doing a keto slash carnivore diet, focusing on high fat because I have Hashimoto's. And this has been a challenge for me on a number of levels, just because the thyroid is kind of a mess. And so last week I was talking to him. We were going over my labs, and the crazy part of this is that my labs are so bad that I probably shouldn't even be functioning. So the fact that I'm functioning is God. But one of the things that is important in healing, a lot of people have known this, is high fat intake. And I have struggled to get the amount of fat that I need because I have had gut issues. And we're talking like to the point of being doubled over in pain
Mm.
when I'm trying to eat fat, whether it's, some people have trouble with liquid fats. For me, it's pretty much anything. And he's tested my liver, he's tested my gallbladder, things like that. On paper, it's fine. But he told me last week, we were talking about this again, and I said, "This is a challenge for me because of these issues." And there have been times where I've had to make an emergency bathroom stop
Mm.
after eating without being too graphic, okay? Um, and he put me on a regimen of eating Celtic sea salt, up to, like, a teaspoon a day, which seems I mean, it's more than you think it is. Like, when you measure it out and put it in a little plate, you're like, "That's a lot of salt." But just taking it in little bits throughout the day with water, and it has been a game changer for me. And I've had
Wow.
people have told me, "Take, digestive enzymes, take this, take bitters, all this stuff," and nothing has helped. And I was getting discouraged because I know the high fat is one of the keys to healing with this type of autoimmune.
Yeah.
And so that was, I mean, crazy. And and I want
That is
people to
awesome.
it's
How
amazing,
exciting that
isn't it?
that's
And so
helped.
I've got my little dish, I measure it out every day, and then I just put a little bit in my mouth, and I'm actually enjoying, like, the crunch, crunch, crunch of the
Yep.
Celtic sea salt. And I haven't tried it with the other salt brands, but the point is that this is a real testimonial to
Mhm.
functional medicine, because imagine going to the doctor, to the traditional system where they spend years telling you don't eat salt because
Right.
it's bad for you, right? No salt, no salt, no salt. And then my doctor says you need to eat more salt. And so, he actually gave me a protocol based on my weight
Mhm.
of how much salt to eat every day. And that's the beauty of having that kind of relationship, and somebody that's looking at you as a person and really hearing you and not prescribing a drug. "Oh, your stomach's hurting? Let's give you an antacid," that kind of thing. And yeah, salt, sea salt. So now every day my little dish is there. I eat it, crunch, 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 drink the water. And, and so now I can eat fat, and I'm eating, yeah, right now it's short ribs, but, just yeah,
I love that. He is
isn't it?
really a great man. He's our
He's
doctor as well and really, really
yeah,
love him.
he's
We've
really gifted.
as well. He really is. He's got
Yeah,
people from all over the world
I
that are
know.
his patients, so
And he and his team pray. They pray
Mhm.
for wisdom and guidance for every patient that they
Yes.
encounter. And so, if you're thinking about switching over, I definitely recommend them. I wanted to say that because it's so out of the box, right?
Right.
Get your gray Celtic sea salt and, eat it. So there they are. Oh, sorry. There they are. So official synapse. Um, and that's where they are. Okay, so let's get back. I've got Stacy Whited here. We have a few more minutes, and we We're going to talk about the dismantling. I wanted to ask you about the uh, what we've seen God doing on the left side of the political spectrum, because I think something amazing is happening. I listened yesterday to an interview with Nicole Shanahan and Allie Beth Stuckey, and Nicole Shanahan was talking about her testimony of coming to Jesus,
Mhm.
baptized. She got baptized on the 20th of this year,
I
or
haven't heard her testimony.
it's I mean, I've got chills.
Wow, that
Because
is
for
awesome.
people who don't know, Nicole Shanahan, in many ways, was like the poster child for California big tech progressive,
Mhm.
especially the wives. She calls them the tech wives mafia. And
Wow.
she, she's a person who has donated millions, if not
Yeah.
billions of dollars to progressive causes, but truly believing that she was doing the right thing.
Mhm.
And one of the things that she said that was so profound, she said, in all of these years, she said, when I was supporting Planned Parenthood, she said, since going on the campaign trail, she had an opportunity to go to a birth center that was run by conservatives that were helping Black women save their babies from abortion. And she said, I held this little baby and I realized that in all the years that I helped women get abortions, I didn't help a single woman save her baby.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, listen to the interview because it's very powerful, but she had a near death experience in September. She almost lost her life in a miscarriage. She almost bled out.
Mm.
And shortly after that, somebody came to her, a believer who came and opened the Bible and said, "Let's talk about the blood of Jesus. You need to hear
Wow.
about that." And
How cool.
okay, so huge shift. And she
Yes.
openly shared on social media her experience of coming to Christ, getting baptized. Um, Russell Brand,
Yep.
same thing. So we're talking about icons
Mhm.
of the progressive movement. We're not
That have
talking of
major influence.
major influence,
Mhm.
major money,
Mhm.
um, and who were really steeped in these beliefs.
Yep.
There's a few more that aren't as big in names, but this to me is an example of what God is doing. Not that the little people don't matter. Please,
Right.
don't misunderstand that. I mean, every soul matters to God. He would leave the 99 to go after the one. That's the
Mhm.
good shepherd. But this is I think, it's obviously an object lesson. God is
Mhm.
teaching us what he can do, because so many times we think that those people are unreachable, that, there's no way so and so would become a
Mhm.
Christian. There's no way that so and so would turn to God. Well, yeah, there is.
Absolutely.
And God is showing that, and I remember somebody blocked me one time, got really mad at me, and sort of, like, rage blocked me because I said that Jesus loves Lady Gaga.
He does.
And I was like, "No, he
He
does."
died on a cross for her.
Yeah, he gave her that voice and that talent,
Yeah,
like,
he did.
amazing talent.
Yes.
She has to choose, though.
Sure.
But yeah, that was just I
But
was
he
like,
gave everything for that for that person to have salvation. I think that's, like, so important. My son Colton has brought this up a few times. We had a pastor in California that we heard him say one time, "God wants everyone to go to heaven. Hell was not created for
yeah,
humans, but you still have to make that choice. There's only
mhm,
one way, and
yeah,
that's through Jesus Christ." But Colton, has brought up that the pastor said, and he said, "I've thought about it so many times that God said, 'You're gonna have to step over my dead body to get to hell.'"
interesting,
And
yeah,
I thought, that is so true because he died on a cross so that we don't have to go to hell. We make
mhm,
a choice, and then he rose from the dead, giving us all authority,
yeah,
and then obviously, living for eternity with him. But there's so many facets to that. It's interesting that you bring that up because, I don't know if I've told you the story before, but when in 2020, do you remember like State of the Union address when President Trump was giving the State of a Union address and Nancy Pelosi was behind him and then she ended up tearing up his
Oh,
his
yeah.
speech? Okay. So when I saw that, like there was like a rage that came up in me and it wasn't like a righteous rage. It was a like hatred, like a real hatred
Yeah.
for her. And when I would see her on the TV, it would like almost change my state. Like I felt really angry and I would have
Mhm.
probably said I hate her if I was to be 100% honest. And when that happened, I felt like God said to me, "I want you to pray for Nancy Pelosi." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yes, I want you to pray." So I actually put her picture on my phone, and in the mornings, I would actually during my prayer time, I would
Yeah.
actually pray over her. And I don't know if you remember the song "The Blessing" by Carrie Job. That's when that
Mhm.
song came out. And sometimes I would actually sing that song over her, and my
Wow.
heart changed. And his whole thing, I don't know if anything was going on with Nancy Pelosi. It may have been more for me than it was for Nancy Pelosi because it's really hard to hate someone that you're praying for.
Mhm.
But I do believe that God has a heart for every person to be saved. And
Yeah.
if we are praying for them, they have a lot higher opportunity for that to happen. And there's opportunities to potentially have conversations with them. If there's hate towards them and there is an opportunity, we're never going to take that opportunity to talk to them about Jesus because we don't even like them. And
Mhm.
so, keeping a heart of love and a willingness to have conversations with people and not completely cutting them out of our life. And I think
Mhm.
that's important. I've got a neighbor across the street that, hates President Trump, was all over Biden and Kamala. During the 2020 election, I think he took signs out of our yard. I mean, there was like some weirdness that went along with that. So
Yeah.
when your neighbor's right there, sometimes it can be really hard to think, man, I'm going to really love my neighbor. But man, it is
Yeah.
so important because you never know what could happen. This could be the next, Russell. I mean, you never know. You
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And I mean, I was thinking about the lady that met with her, and she was introduced by somebody else that Nicole Shanahan knew. But, for that lady to go and sit with Nicole knowing her background,
Right.
right? I mean, this is a public figure, and it can be very intimidating.
Sure.
But to be obedient to God and to do that and to have that conversation and literally, the way Nicole describes it, like this lady opened the Bible, like no small talk. Just said, and I don't know if maybe she knew what had happened, with her almost bleeding out, but just, obviously God directed her to do that, right?
Sure.
And, just said, you need to understand what the blood of Jesus did for you. And it's
Wow.
just so powerful.
It is so
And but
powerful.
she was obedient and bold to speak
Mhm.
the truth and not sugarcoat, what God has done, and then imagine now the mandate that Nicole Shanahan has and how it's shifted and how many
Sure.
people are watching her, and, there are some people who have completely cut her out of their lives, but they're watching.
Sure,
They're watching.
absolutely. No doubt about it. She does have a big voice and a platform. I would think and say one more thing with that too. That person that was sharing it, boldness, courage in order to do that, but at the same time had to have enough love in their heart that they even cared to share the message of
Yeah.
Jesus. Sometimes I think over the last, and I have to be very careful myself, where you can just see so much evil that's happened in the world. You can kind of become jaded that you're like,
Mhm.
I'm just going to go ahead and just cut that person out. I'm not even going to talk to them anymore. I don't even really care. When that happens, we lose the love to even have an opportunity to talk to somebody. And I am preaching to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody else. It's a reminder of because it's
Yeah.
all been about, if you go back to 2020, everything's been about division. How can we divide
Yeah.
people and make them hate each other, whether it be the color of their skin, if they wear a mask or don't wear a mask, if they're vaxxed, if they're not vaxxed, it just continues. If they're a Democrat, if they're Republican. I mean, it just on and on and on. How can we divide? How can we make people hate each other? And that is definitely not the way to winning. We don't condone sin, but at the same time,
Mhm.
Jesus never did, but at the same time, he always loved.
Right, right. Yeah, and I was just kinda thinking about my own situation because, I mean, it's hard. It's
Yes.
really hard, but you also you see these people. For example, I saw a video earlier today where a man was sitting at a traffic light and, gave a rude gesture to a driver in a car with a Trump sticker. And the driver rolled his window down and he goes, "What does it make you feel good to do that? Like, why? Why are
Right.
you doing that?" And the guy in the car just went off and he had all of these stereotypes and all these talking points and said, "You guys are so ignorant and you everything you think you know comes from Fox News and you just," and it was so and he was spouting all of these talking points that he had gotten from
Oh, yeah.
from MSDNC, and the irony of it is, like, you know, they've been convinced that because the woke mind virus has infected so many people who are susceptible to that collectivist
Mhm.
thought, they think that everyone who has come to this aha moment to think for themselves has been told what to say and what to think, because that's what they're
Right.
susceptible to.
Yeah.
But when I think about this, I have to remember that the battle is not against flesh and blood, it's a battle of the spirit and of the mind,
Yep.
because the way that that man um, expressed himself, it wasn't actually an original thought.
No.
It was just a series of talking points that were obviously fed to him because of
Mhm.
his susceptibility. And so as we work through this battle, as we look at what's happening and what God is doing with this dismantling,
Mhm.
it's important to remember and to pray for a sound mind, and for
Yes.
especially for Christians to walk into the battle with a sound mind.
Mhm.
And, I remember when my dad was in the hospital, my stepdad, when he had his stroke, he was dealing with delirium. And there were
Mhm.
moments, especially at night, where he would get completely out of his mind. And I remember one night I was trying to calm him down because the hospital, they wanna give you drugs. And I said, "Just hold on. Let me talk to him. Let me
Mhm.
just sit with him." And, I'm exhausted. Everybody's tired. You wanna go home. And I was praying and I said, "God, I don't know what to do." And so then it came to me. I just looked at my dad and I said, "Listen, say these words." And I put my hand on his forehead, one hand on his head, one hand on his chest, and I just said, "Listen, repeat after me. I have I have a sound mind.
Mm.
I have peace in my heart." And I just stood there probably for like 30 minutes saying that over and over, and he could barely talk, right? And I just said, "Just that's all you need to say. I have
Yeah.
a sound mind.
So good.
I have peace in my heart." That's all I could do. And
Mhm.
then he went to sleep, and without drugs.
That's so
Right?
good.
But it was the peace of God.
Yep.
And so I think that as we look at people who are obviously infected,
Mhm.
they're in a delirious state.
Yep.
They don't know who they are. They obviously don't have an identity in Christ.
Mhm.
And they're getting all of their identity through this, division politics
Yep.
and through, panic porn and rage politics,
Mhm.
that it is so critical that people come to an identity. And so, maybe it's just a matter of just saying to them, you know, I have peace in my I have a sound mind, I
Yep.
have peace in my heart, because that's what God wants for us. He
Mhm.
has not given you a spirit of fear, but He's given you the power and love and a sound mind. And so this is where I think the difference is when
Mhm.
we're able to walk into a situation, because every day we put on the shoes of the preparation of the gospel of peace.
Yep.
And so when our feet walk into a situation, are we bringing peace or are we bringing discord and division? I'm
Great
preaching
question.
to myself right now.
I know. That's something that we have to be very aware of today. That's why I was saying even myself. I mean, truly, it's like this is something that if you're alive right now, that the enemy is coming. I mean, it's been this way forever, but
Mhm.
2020, it really amplified this whole division and it just continues. We're seeing it with Teslas and all these different things that we're seeing today, that it's just a crazy time. So
Yeah.
how do you just like you said, how do you make sure you have a sound mind and you have peace in your heart? That is critical because, and then love, the love is an important
Yes.
part of that. And love does not condone. I just want to make sure that it's like, well, if somebody's in sin, yeah, Jesus, same with the lady that was caught in adultery. They
Yeah.
were going to stone her. And he said, for the person that has no sin in their life, cast the first stone. They all dropped their stones. He could have stoned her because
Mhm.
he had no sin. It says he died sinless, but he didn't. And he looked at her and he said, "Go and sin no more." It was like he loved her, but he didn't say what she was doing was right, but he still loved her. And I
Mhm.
think that is there people
Mhm.
feel that. People feel love. And so I
Right.
think getting our love on and just be willing to have conversations, and I'm again preaching to
Mhm.
myself, have conversations with a willingness of how
Mhm.
can we talk and have a really good conversation that could potentially lead to something really great.
Right, and I think one piece of that too is when it comes to love, we have to be careful that we don't confuse human compassion with love,
Yes.
because the love of God is cuts through to the truth of a
Mhm.
situation. Human compassion can kill you
Yes.
because
So
you
true.
because you get, swayed by emotion,
Mhm.
and this is what we see a lot with people who are into causes, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that I think, can really can really be the downfall, especially of Christians.
Yes.
We can succumb to that, and it can take us off of our mission,
Mhm.
when we confuse loving somebody with being swayed by human compassion.
That is a
Um,
really great point. You're exactly right.
yeah, so and it's when you see the difference, it's hard sometimes because, we are emotive people and we
Mhm.
feel deeply, but we have to be careful that we're walking in God's will in a situation, not being swayed by that, by feelings and emotions. It's a
Yes.
big deal.
Yes.
Um, Stacy, I know that you have a hard stop here on the clock, and we could keep this
Oh,
conversation
I always might love my conversations with
for a
you. I
long
could go
time.
on and on for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I always thoroughly enjoy them.
we'll have to plan a longer time next time. Tell everybody again, where to find you, how to follow you, and we will have you back on the show very soon.
Aw, thank you, Mary Grace. So our website is flyoverconservatives.com, and we are on 60 different platforms. So wherever you consume your content, the only one that will not allow us to be on there is YouTube. We've lost now 8, or we're on our 8th channel, and they've taken down all of the videos that we just put up. So can't get us on YouTube, but wherever else. If you listen, just Spotify or Apple,
Yeah,
we're there. Rumble, you name it, you can find us other than YouTube.
that's crazy. Yeah. We're
Crazy.
we're streaming to YouTube right now, so we'll see what happens, because
That
I
could be
have
interesting.
I have certain people that when they come on the show, I don't even bother with YouTube because I think that their AI can detect even their voice or their name.
Yes,
And
I'll be
then
curious what happens, Mary Grace.
like, I could like Dave, like, praying medic,
Yep.
they hate him so bad that, we can't even put his name in the title of
Oh
things.
my gosh.
I know, and so we typically we don't even stream, when we have
Yep.
him on the show, so it's kind of funny, but, so everyone who's listening, thank you for being here. We will be back on Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern, with, our friend PM, and so we want to invite you back because we will have a great conversation as always with him. That's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be on all the channels where we stream. And if you're wondering how to get in touch with me or to find any of my shows, just go to marygracemedia.com. You can link to all my channels right there from the website. Everybody have a great day. Thank you for being here. And this has been a wonderful time with our friend Stacy Whited from the Flyover Conservatives. We will see you soon.